All right, I think we're ready for business. Hello again. It is Foghorn with another installment of Flight School Academics for this, the 1st of December, 2018. 2948 for those of you stuck in the verse. Merry Christmas, or soon to be Christmas. Anywho. This presentation is part of an ongoing series of academics for the members of the Aurora Republic, a premier role-playing organization in Star Citizen. If you are new to the Aurora Republic or visiting for the first time, let me start by saying welcome. We are glad to have you with us and would love to hear more from you if you are interested in hearing more from us. We are a lawful good organization focused on roleplay exploration and social interaction, and are currently active and recruiting on Spectrum and Discord. A couple of small minutia things before we begin. We have some new members since the last time we talked, which is actually almost a month ago, considering I've been out gallivanting out around the Pacific, and then there was Thanksgiving, of course. So let's say hello to our new members. Since we last spoke, we had Vader Hexagon joined us, Fred the Gamer, Master Corn Chip, and then some friends from Odin have decided to take the plunge and become Aurora Republic citizens. Gwydion Wolf, Karupa, Silent Spartan, and then all the way from across one ocean and a sea, all the way over in Greece, we have Orlamir, and welcome to all of you folks. We're darned glad to have you. Hanging out in the Twitch chat with us, we have Tiger Jacks, hello, along with our usual crowd of naysayers, drunkards, and miscreants. Always glad to have you guys here. Rules of engagement. We are streaming this on Twitch, so that if you're listening on Twitch, there's an 8-second delay from when I say something. If you're in the Discord with me, I would suggest you mute the Twitch so you're not hearing me twice. I will monitor the Twitch chat as best I can for questions, not promising you anything. If I do see it, I will stop and repeat the question for the recording for the YouTubers later so they can hear what was asked. And then, of course, I'll do my best to answer it, which is sort of the point. Tonight, actually, one more announcement before we begin. For the Aurora Republic members, full org meeting for the end of the quarter. Full org meeting will be on the 15th of December, which is 2 weeks from today, Saturday, the 15th of December, 16:30 Pacific time. That's 4:30 Pacific time for all of you who can't count past 12. So yeah, 2 weeks. We have a lot of information to be going over then. It's going to be good. You don't want to miss it. You do not want to miss it. We are having a giveaway of something pretty darn cool for those who are in attendance. So please send this message around. We will, of course, be sending out emails and reminders to everybody as well. But make sure all your org mates know that they need to be there. You got to be there to win. You got to be there to get the goodies. And we'll also, while we're there, we're also going to be announcing a competition, a game that will have also a pretty cool prize. So there's 2 big reasons for you to be there, plus, of course, all of the extremely important org information that you'll get access to, and access to the chat and the discussions and all of the things for where we're going here in the near future. All right, enough blah blah from the admin world, and let's get into tonight's Rackademics. First, let me transition that over, and then we'll click on this over here, like that sort of a thing, and then we'll go over that. So, of course, we're continuing on in combat aviation. This should be fairly quick, because it's only about 7 slides for me to blabber through, and then we'll get into flying in the verse tonight. Sounds like great. Gee, Guatemalan water snake. Can it be one of those neat bowling shirts? I wish it could be, but unfortunately we're actually out of those, and I'm waiting for at least 2 more people who want to buy them, so we can have enough for a minimum order. So if there's anybody out there who would like to get the Aurora Republic polo, please get in contact with us at aurora.republic.org@gmail.com, which will make me very happy if I can find 2 more people, because there's a minimum number for us to be able to make an order, and we're 2 people short of having enough. So, all right. Basic fighter maneuvers. Basically, last time we talked about gun employment, which you need, and the things you got to remember that. Missile employment, which is much easier. but can be a lot more. Well, right now their missiles are pretty well nerfed in Star Citizen, but I do not believe that will remain the case into the future. I do believe that missiles are going to be coming back to be a viable weapon when used and employed correctly. All right, so we're just going to talk about those things. In case you're not familiar with how missiles work in the game, it's pretty simple. First, they have to acquire the target, which is what everybody calls lock. That's a term I sort of detest, but we can talk about that another time. Acquire target. First off, the sensors of your spacecraft has to be tracking the target that you want. And then the default is a short click on the middle mouse button on your mouse wheel. The Z-axis click on it will get whichever the selected missile is. We'll start attempting to acquire in your HUD. That'll look like 3 or 4 pieces of a round red circle that will start floating out there and start trying to encompass your desired target. And when they basically form a circle around it and stay there, and that's when you know that the missile is ready to launch. To launch it, then, is just the same button held for a long click. Now that's the default keyboard and mouse. If you have mapped your buttons, if you've mapped those keybinds out onto sticks or HOTAS or any of that sort of stuff, then I can't predict exactly where you put it, but you probably need at least 1 or 2 buttons key mapped. You can take those 2 functions, the acquire target and launch target, and actually put those on different buttons if you'd like. Or put them on the same button and do a short and long click, just like you see there. Okay, so basically there's 3 types of missiles. There's and they're classified by how they are, what their guidance system is to get them to track the target you shoot them at. There are, of course, different sizes and all of that sort of thing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the guidance logic that they use is the major factor. And the reason you want to know this is for when they're shot at you and when you're going to employ them against someone else, so you know what the potential countermeasures are and what sort of considerations to take into effect. So they are, of course, electromagnetic, infrared, and cross-section. And they work basically as the names say, with the exception of maybe cross-section might be not so obvious. So we'll start off with the electromagnetic missile characteristics. It's basically a way of saying radar-guided if it were modern day. The electromagnetic missiles guidance logic is going to be basically looking at either an active sensor return off of the target vehicle, or it could also be doing it passively off of the EM emissions from that target vehicle. Either way will work. It has sort of a slower acquisition time. We'll say it's actually sort of a medium acquisition time because it's out of the 3 guidance logics, it's the middle one as far as how fast does it lock. So that is something you need to take into consider when you're considering your weapons loadout. The countermeasure against it is chaff, and of course, anytime that you're going to employ a countermeasure, you also want to maneuver the bird. If you simply throw out countermeasures, most missiles are going to be able to hack that. They're going to be able to still find the spacecraft within the cloud of countermeasures. So you never just throw chaff out or throw flares out. You always put G on the jet, aka, as we say, put G on the jet. You turn and get the heck out. So you leave that counter. The countermeasure is a decoy. So the last thing you want to do is throw down a decoy and then stand right beside the decoy. You want to throw the decoy down and get the hell out of the way. So that's what I say by chaff and maneuver. And it has been assessed that it's effective. This should spoof the missile most of the time, assuming these assessments are based on an assumption of a coordinated size of missile for the craft. Obviously, if somebody's shooting size 9 torpedoes at your little Avenger Stalker, which would be absolutely redonkulous, except for that we've actually done it in test and it's kind of fun. The bigger the size of missile, the harder it is to spoof, at least right now in the Alpha 3 world. But so when I'm making these assessments of effectiveness, I'm talking about a size 1 or 2 missile against a small bird like, and effectively, if you want to call it size 1 or 2 fighter craft. So keep that in mind, please. Okay, IR stands for infrared. This is your classic heat seeker. These have an extremely fast acquisition time. So in a dogfight, this might actually be your fastest way to get a weapon off the rail and at the bad guy. Of course, the countermeasure to that is a flare. And again, put G on the jet whenever you peek out the flares. IRs are the fastest acquisition time, and they usually tend to be the fastest missile as well, as far as the actual velocity of how fast it comes off the rail and gets out there. But it's also the easiest to spoof. Flares plus maneuver is assessed to be very effective. Again, remember my size comments earlier before everybody starts complaining at me. And the last one, of course, is the cross-section missile, which is actually basically the modern day version of this is called a pseudo-imaging infrared, which is basically, it means that the seeker nugget on the missile works sort of like the human eyeball. It basically looks out there and looks at your ship and does a visual memorization of the shape of the ship. So it's called that. That's why they call it the cross-section guidance system or cross-section missile in Star Citizen. It's actually learning the shape of your ship, and it's going to come after you, which means it can't be spoofed by chaff and it can't be spoofed by flares. There is no decoy countermeasure that can spoof this, because it goes, okay, I've memorized the shape of that Avenger, so I'm going to go after that. For game balance and that sort of thing, it has the slowest acquisition time. This sucker takes quite a while to actually dope it out, and so you have to hold the target vehicle somewhere out in the front hemisphere, front cone of the of your jet long enough for that thing to complete its acquisition and memorize that shape. So really the only countermeasure when you fire it or somebody fires one of these at you is that you've got to break that line of sight. You got to put something, you basically have to hide just long enough to break the line of sight, and that breaks the lock on the missile. The missile goes stupid. If you can put something bigger than you between you and it so that it breaks that eyeball. The logic is that these missiles don't have enough computing power, or whatever you want to say it, or not technologically advanced enough to do predictive aiming and go, okay, I saw him go behind that big boulder that floating in space, that big asteroid, in this direction, and just extrapolate out his flight path and wait for him on the other side. So I guess that's probably a balance feature, which is, I guess, cool. So that's why breaking the line of sight works. It keeps from these missiles from being undefeatable. So that's how you defeat those. It's just simple maneuver, so you don't need chaff, you don't need flare, just freaking fly behind something big enough to break the line of sight. And that's assessed to always work. I've never seen one of these things go chase somebody around an asteroid, or go chase, or like I said, cut off to the front side of the asteroid and wait for them. Okay, the countermeasure symbols in your HUD, because you only have 2 countermeasures, even though there are 3 different missile types, are basically as they show you right there. The flame symbol is your flares. So right now this, it's an Avenger. So this is the cockpit of the Avenger. The flame symbol, he's got 16 flares ready, and that because that's the highlighted one. The chaff is the lightning bolt, as you see above it. Also, he has 16 rounds of chaff that he could deploy, and that one is not selected because it's unhighlighted. So there's another set of switches that you gotta either have programmed out or know where they are in the keyboard. And I think I actually kind of forgot where they were on the keyboard because I have them programmed out. So I'll post that out in Discord later on when I go look it up, because I should have looked that up before I started streaming, but I didn't. It's too late now. So you're gonna have a switch to switch between chaff or flare, just to rotary back and forth between them, and then of course a button to dispense. And right now, I don't believe that they have the keybinds set up to give you the option of putting 2 different switches, one that just automatically puts out flares and one that just automatically puts out chaff. I don't mean puts them out on an automatic fashion. I mean without you having to switch. They decided to go with 2 keybinds, one that switches them and one that deploys them, instead of have one that just deploys chaff and one that just deploys flares, which is the way I would have done it. Oh, by the way, is the way it's done in real life, by the way. Those are all on different buttons, so I don't have to freaking rotary between stuff. I can just have an instant slap switch. Boom, out goes chaff. Boom, I mash forward on the CMOS switch, and out goes the flares. So that's pretty much all of it. For missiles, we will probably revisit this in the future when missiles get unnerfed and start becoming a real thing. All right. Yay, thanks, Scout. Cycle your countermeasures is V for Victor. Launch the countermeasures is C for Charlie on the keyboard. So if you're flying keyboard and mouse, that's where you gotta. Those are your buttons to be able to defend yourself from those nasty, nasty missiles. Right now, in all seriousness, unless it's somebody shooting a big one at you, so if it's not like a Vanguard or bigger, you can almost disregard missiles. Almost nobody even uses them because they're so nerf. They're just going to bounce, or they're just going to splash on your shields, and you're going to go like, oh, okay. Yeah, you got me. So, oh yeah, by the way, the comm, if you guys remember back for the comm brevity, we arbitrarily decided, because we can do that we were going to call EM missiles Fox 1 for when you are shooting them at somebody. IR is Fox 2, and cross-section is Fox 3. Like I said, those are arbitrary, which one's 1, 2, or 3. The reason why you would want to designate this to your teammates what you're shooting is because in real life, there's no such thing as lock when it comes to missiles. You know, an infrared missile sees hot, and it doesn't know whose hot that is. So saying that you locked a heat seeker on somebody is a complete misnomer. Oh, by the way, the real world, the military doesn't use that word lock when you're talking about missiles. So if you shoot a heat-seeking missile at the bad guy and your wingman flies in between that missile and the bad guy, there's a 50-50 chance over which guy that missile's going to go after, because it doesn't know whose hot is whose. It just sees hot and it goes after hot, is the quick and unclassified way of explaining that. So yeah, 2 steps to employ. You got to acquire first, aka lock, and then launch. Short click on your middle mouse button, long click on your middle mouse button will give you each one of those respectively. And that is it. Any questions before we head out and go out into the verse and fly and have a good time? I'll give it a couple of seconds. Sit here and stall for time in case any last questions come through. Oh, yes. I'm drinking a Guinness Blonde, by the way, because I'm working my way through the 6-pack.
I got a question.
I have an answer.
So when should you fire missiles, or is that a different topic?
Like I said, that's something we'll probably revisit because missiles are so nerf right now.
Okay.
They're kind of they're basically useless right now. That was deliberate because I think they're still trying to dial in the flight model. They're still trying to dial in IFCS. They're still trying to dial in ESP, bourbon barrel stout. There, that sounds good, Simon. So right now, for missiles to actually be a factor, you gotta be shooting a couple of sizes bigger. If you're shooting size 1 or size 2, they're just a joke. They really are. Size 3s are kind of, they're starting, size 3 against a small fighter is starting to become a dangerous weapon. You got to be shooting like 5s and bigger before they actually become a fairly serious factor, which pretty much you got to be in a really big ship to do that. Now when would you, there's a couple of different philosophies. I know people, in previous version of Chris Roberts games, shall we say, Wing Commander series, all 5 of them. There was a couple of different philosophies in there. Some people would use missiles as their opening overture. They're like, huck a missile out there because it was a pretty big warhead. They weren't nerf in that. I mean, you could huck a missile out there and pretty much knock a guy's shields completely down and then just tear through them with the guns. Or the reverse of that is kind of the two philosophies of go in there, beat their shields up with the guns, and when the shields are down, smoke the missile on there as a goodbye. Let them have it. Missiles, as far as their fly out here in Wing Commander and now Star Citizen, is laughable compared to modern day, missile capabilities. So that's the good news. Is 930 years in the future, missiles are far worse than they are today. But that's okay. I understand it's about gameplay, and this is a Vigi game. What do you use best against the EMP like the Saber Raven? That's a very good question. I don't know. We're gonna have to actually run some tests on that and kind of get our Warlocks and Ravens in the org out, and that's something for our research and development division. The Department of Defense here is probably going to put out a memo here in the near future, specifically to the science division, going, hey, please task R&D folks to start running experiments on the following things. This is the following data the Defense Department is requesting you guys go figure out. That would probably be a good one. What's the best way to counter an EMP other than just not being there? I don't know how EMP would affect missiles. The short answer is I doubt missiles are going to be EMP hardened. Therefore, at the instant of EMP burst, it would probably knock out the guidance logic of any missile in flight. That's my thought, but that is not based on any sort of research in how CIG is building it. It's a video game, so they can create whatever fantasy universe that they want, and I heavy emphasis on the word fantasy. That's just my thoughts. Ballistics. Remember this, is that ballistics, EMP does not affect ballistics. So bullets in flight aren't going to be affected by EMP. It's not going to care. Bullets are going to keep flying. So, size 1 or 2 missiles as decoys to force a defensive use of EMP. There's a thought I hadn't had. Yeah, if CIG models them that way, if that's the way they model it, if missiles get to be more lethal, my thought on the sizing and balance idea is that, if it's a size 1 missile, I think a size 1 missile, if it directly hits a size 1 shield, those two should cancel each other out. That if I hit you squarely with a size 1 missile and you are untouched, your shield bubble is untouched, it should drop that shield bubble, or at least that face of the shield bubble, down to zilch. And if I hit you, if I hit a small, say, we'll call it size 1 spacecraft that doesn't have a shield bubble up and is lightly armored, if I hit you with a size 1 missile on that Aurora or that Mustang, that should probably make the Aurora or the Mustang explode. Now, I hear a lot of people say, well, that just makes, the missiles be an I win button. And the answer is yes, and I'm okay with that, because you just limit them in numbers, which they're kind of going that way with the most fighters can only carry 2 to 4, which is actually fairly realistic to modern day. You're only going to have like 2 to 4 missiles. Missiles are lethal, and they should be. They shouldn't be undefeatable. So countermeasures should work fairly well, particularly countermeasures when they're properly employed should have a very high rate of spoofing the missile off of you. But as far as if a missile successfully hits, it should be a freaking catastrophic event, unless you are absolutely untouched with a full shield bubble of the same sizing as the missile that hit you. So a size 2 missile should pretty much drop size 1 shields, in my opinion, and do a significant amount of damage to the target, maybe even destroy it if it's small enough. So, and then you balance just by making them so big and so heavy that, you know, most of the ships can only carry just a couple, and then also make them expensive to replace, because that is very realistic. You should see what the cost of a Sidewinder is. Anywho. Any word if they're going to make the game realistic with missiles, or just once it's locked to its target's over? The jury's still out. I think the expectation is that they are going to make missiles much more viable as a weapon. But for those reasons I said earlier, they just don't yet. They haven't done that yet. They're leaving it. They're trying to get the gunplay mechanic, because right now, I mean, even in 336, the ESP is still dog shit. It's still it still magnetically pulls your nose of your spacecraft towards the target, like almost to the point of causing midair collisions. And however, right up until the time that you get to actually wanting to shoot, and then it suddenly turns into a negative magnetic pole, you know, south to south pole, and actually fights you and tries to keep your pipper, you know, half an inch off the target. So it pulls your nose in, you know, from 25 degrees off. It pulls your nose in onto the target, but then it stops when your pipper is half the pipper width outside of the solution. And you can't get no matter how hard you jam your sticks, you can't get it to go that last, you know, 5 pixels to get on target and start putting shots on target regularly. So ESP is still all dicked up. It hasn't been right since 2.6.3. It's to the point, I mean, when I started playing, it was 2.6.3, and I just lived in Arena Commander, because it was like, this is awesome. Go out and shoot guys and blow them up. It's, you know, it's awesome. And then 3.0 came out, and ESP hasn't been right since. You know, it's unusable. So I think they're still working on that, and they've just said, like, we'll just keep missiles on the back burner, and that's cool. I'm okay with that idea for development, because this is not a game yet. This is alpha. So, anywho. Yep. Thanks for posting that, Simon. If anybody in here, Aurora Republic members, or any guests, of course, as well, if you are an Amazon Prime member, you have a monthly recurring free sub to one Twitch channel. So we would be absolutely ecstatic, elated, and thankful if you would bequeath that sub upon us and sub to our channel. It does help bring in some money into the org for use. And like I said, if you come to the full org meeting, you will see how and where some of that money is being used. Anyway, well, if there's no more questions, then I'm going to wrap this up. Going once. Going twice. Sold. I mean, not sold. All right. Tiger Jacks is an old nugget. 1.0.0. What was that, like the hanger module, wasn't it? Okay. All right, cool. Simon's going to post a guide in the general section that explains a lot of that stuff. So, all righty then. This wraps up this installment of Academics of Foghorn. I hope you found it interesting and helpful. If you have any questions I didn't answer, please feel free to contact me via email, Discord, Spectrum, and of course the comment section is below for all our YouTubers. I will answer to the best of my ability as quickly as I can. If you are part of the Aurora Republic membership and haven't hit follow or subscribe button on this channel already, please hit it immediately and enable notifications so that we can keep you up to date whenever we're going to stream or post any new content. If you are a visitor to this channel, please feel free to hit that follow or subscribe button as appropriate, as your feedback really does help us, and we're always striving to improve our content. You can find out more information about us at aurorarepublic.space. Our pretty cool little website. You can also find out on Spectrum at robertspaceindustriescom/org/Aurora Rep. And of course, if you're watching us now on Twitch TV or later on YouTube, you already know how to find us. So I won't bother you with that. We'll see you next time. This is Foghorn signing off. Wishing you a pleasant and remainder of your morning, afternoon, and or evening. And if you guys give me about 2 minutes, I will be ready to go fly in the universe. Thank you guys very much for watching.